Welcome back to Calm Coding, where we try to, I don't know, make sense of all the cybersecurity chaos out there.
Mhm.
This week, we've got some interesting articles, one from TechRadar, one from Forbes, and then another one from The Register.
Yeah, and it's a real mix this time. We've got everything from vulnerabilities that are impacting, everyday tech like Docker and Samsung smartphones to, these huge initiatives that are trying to really boost cybersecurity talent. There's just a ton to go through.
Definitely. And one of the things that really stood out to me, at least from scanning all these articles, was this theme of human error.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we have all this super advanced tech and all these crazy security measures, but sometimes
Right.
it just comes down to someone making a mistake.
It's like the weakest link thing, right?
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, the article from the Register about the Hot Topic breach.
Yeah.
Millions of shoppers' data stolen, and it turned out that it was because an employee at their marketing partner, Roebling, I think it was, had malware on their computer. Ugh, it's like you said, that weakest link. It makes you wonder, what could they have done to prevent that? You know.
Well, they definitely highlight, the fact that a lot of companies aren't using MFA, multi-factor authentication, for their cloud
It's
storage.
so simple, though, right?
It is.
Yeah.
But, for some reason, it's just not being implemented as widely as it should be. It's like, come on, people. It's like one extra step. It can make such a huge difference.
I totally agree. And I don't know, this whole situation just makes me think about, all these companies that are collecting tons of our data. Are they doing enough to actually protect it? Are they taking these basic steps like MFA seriously?
Right. And I mean, it's not just about protecting against external threats either, right? You also have to think about the internal risks. Like what if an employee accidentally leaks data or if someone misuses their credentials? Yeah, that's a good point. I guess it all boils down to creating a culture of security awareness, right? Like everyone in the company from the top down needs to understand the importance of protecting sensitive data.
Absolutely. Everyone's got to be on the same page.
So on a more positive note, the Forbes article about AWS and the NFL partnering up to, try to bridge the cybersecurity skills gap really caught my eye. It's awesome to see that they're putting a focus on HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities.
It's huge. It's like finally some recognition for these incredibly talented students. I mean, the article pointed out that only 22% of the cybersecurity workforce is diverse. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking when you think about it, especially given how much emphasis there is on diversity and inclusion in other fields.
And it's not just about fairness or representation, though those are important, obviously. It's also about the fact that we need diverse perspectives in cybersecurity. To come up with new and creative solutions to these complex problems, we need people with different backgrounds and experiences.
That's so true. And it was inspiring to read about Kyla Ross, this student who found her passion for cybersecurity through an AWS mentorship program.
Yeah.
It just shows how impactful mentorship and real-world experience can be.
Oh, I loved that story. I think it really highlights the power of mentorship, especially in a field like cybersecurity where hands-on experience it's so valuable.
Definitely. And it's not just about technical skills either, right? It's about building confidence, about helping people feel like they belong in this industry.
Absolutely. It's about, creating a supportive community and initiatives like this partnership between AWS and the NFL. Those are steps in the right direction.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about some of the specific vulnerabilities and attacks that made the news this week.
Hmm.
The TechRadar article about Docker API servers being exploited to spread crypto mining malware, that one really caught my attention.
Oh, yeah, that's a tricky one. What's really interesting about this attack is that they're using gRPC. That protocol that's often used for communication between microservices. And they're basically using it to kind of evade those traditional security solutions that maybe aren't monitoring gRPC traffic as closely.
So they're exploiting a blind spot in a lot of systems.
Exactly. And the crazy part is their goal with this is to install, get this, the SRB miner payload on these servers that they're compromising. And for those who don't know, SRB Miner is a type of software that's used to mine cryptocurrency, probably Monero in this case, because, Monero is known for its privacy features. It's like these guys are hijacking the processing power of these servers to make money for themselves.
It's like the classic example of how these cybercriminals are always finding new ways to, monetize their attacks.
Right. It's wild. I mean, for anyone out there using Docker, it's super important to make sure you're implementing strong access controls for your API servers. Don't just rely on the default settings. Take the time to configure your environment securely.
Yeah, good advice. Now, speaking of staying up to date, this critical vulnerability in Fortinet's FortiManager, it's like, this is why patching is so important. This one's labeled CVE 2024-47575, and the article says it allows for remote code execution. And get this, it's already being exploited out in the wild.
That's scary, right? Because remote code execution essentially means that attackers have, complete control over the compromised system. And we're talking about FortiManager here, which is used for like centralized management of all these Fortinet security devices. So it's like if they can get into that, they can potentially wreak havoc.
It's a nightmare scenario, right?
Yeah.
And the article mentions that they're using this vulnerability to steal sensitive data from FortiManager, like IP addresses, even credentials and configuration details.
I know, it's just crazy. And this is exactly why, like we've said before, patching is so crucial. Both Docker and Fortinet have released updates to address these vulnerabilities, so anyone using these products needs to update immediately.
Patch, 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 right. I know it's like a broken record at this point, but it's one of the most effective ways to protect yourself.
Absolutely. And going back to the Hot Topic breach, that whole thing has taken an interesting turn. Apparently, a hacker who calls himself Satanic is claiming that he was behind it, and he's actually calling it the largest retail data breach in history.
Oh, wow. That's a bold claim.
I know, right? They're saying it affects not just Hot Topic, but also Box Lunch and Torrid, and could involve as many as 350 million customers. The hacker claims to have billions of, payment details and loyalty points.
Wow, that's insane. I guess we'll have to see how this develops, but definitely raises some serious questions about the security practices of these companies.
For sure. I mean, the retail industry as a whole needs to be way more vigilant. This is a wake-up call.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground already, but we're just getting started. We'll be right back with more cybersecurity insights and analysis in part 2 of our deep dive.
Welcome back. We're picking up right where we left off. That Hot Topic breach, Box Lunch, and Torrid. I mean, we're talking a possible 350 million customers. It's huge.
Largest retail data breach in history. That's what the hacker's calling it. Satanic, they call themselves. I mean, billions of payment details, loyalty points. That's a lot to be floating around out there.
Yeah, it's scary to think about. It makes you really wonder about these companies' security practices, doesn't it? Like, what are they doing to actually protect all this data?
Right. You'd think with all the sensitive information they handle, payment details, addresses, loyalty program data, all that, they'd be extra careful.
You'd think. I mean, it's a goldmine for cyber criminals. And it's not just external threats either. Insider threats are a big concern too.
Oh, totally. A disgruntled employee, someone clicks a phishing link by mistake. It doesn't take much to cause a major breach.
Nope, it doesn't. That's why you got to have those comprehensive security measures in place. Strong passwords, MFA, like we were talking about, regular training for employees, so they know what to look out for, and a solid plan for what to do if something does happen.
Yeah, a good incident response plan is key. Speaking of which, got to circle back to patching. Seems like every week there's a new vulnerability popping up. It's a never-ending cycle.
It really is. Developers patch, attackers find new ways in. It's like this constant back and forth. Companies have got to stay on top of it, make sure their systems are updated, all that.
Absolutely. Patching, it might seem boring, but it's essential.
It's like locking your front door. Right. A simple step that can prevent a whole lot of trouble.
Exactly. And it's not just your operating systems and applications either. It's your security software too, your antivirus, firewalls, all that. They can have vulnerabilities too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Those need updates just as much as anything else. Speaking of security software, a couple of things caught my eye in the Tech Radar article. One was this polyfill attack. Yeah, so polyfill.io, it's a legitimate service, helps make websites work on older browsers. Well, apparently it got acquired, and now it's being used to redirect users to these, get this, malicious gambling sites.
Oh, that's sneaky.
Totally. It's a supply chain attack, they call it. Compromise a trusted service, then use it to spread malware or redirect users to dodgy websites.
So you really have to be careful about who you're doing business with, make sure your vendors are taking security seriously.
Absolutely. And then there's this news about the SEC, going after these big cybersecurity companies, Unisys, Avaya, Checkpoint, Mimecast, big names.
Yeah, what was that about?
They were downplaying the effects of the SolarWinds attack, apparently.
Whoa, really? Those are the companies that are supposed to be protecting us from these kinds of attacks, and they're downplaying it. Not a good look.
Not at all. Transparency is so important in this industry. Companies need to be upfront about the risks and the impact of these attacks, both to their customers and their investors.
It's about trust.
Right.
Transparency builds trust, and trust is what we need to create a more secure digital world.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's talk mobile for a sec. Forbes had this article about a Samsung Galaxy S24 getting hacked at the Pwn2Own competition.
Pwn2Own, that's like the Olympics of hacking, right?
Pretty much. Top hackers, they all come together and try to find and exploit vulnerabilities in these popular devices and software. And this time, they got a Samsung Galaxy S24 5 zero-day exploits.
5. That's a lot. So they got full control of the phone.
Yep. Shell access, they call it, means they can do pretty much anything they want. Installed a random application just to prove they could.
That's unsettling, because no device is truly safe, huh?
That's the truth. The good news is Samsung's got 90 days to patch those vulnerabilities before the details go public.
So, ticking clock for Samsung. They better get on it.
Yep. And speaking of things that aren't as secure as we thought, remember E2EE, end-to-end encryption.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the gold standard, right? Your data is encrypted on your device, can only be decrypted by the person you're sending it to. Super secure.
Well, turns out not so much. TechRadar had this article about how several big E2E cloud storage providers have some pretty serious security flaws.
Really, like what kind of flaws?
Compromised servers could allow attackers to inject files, mess with your data, even potentially access the plain text.
So even with the encryption, there are still weak points in the system.
Yep, unfortunately. Sync, pCloud, IceDrive, C-File, Trezrit, those were some of the ones mentioned in the article.
Makes you think twice about where you're storing your data, even with those E2E providers.
Definitely. Always a good idea to do your research, choose providers with a good track record for security and transparency.
Now, taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, the Internet Archive, that digital library with tons of free books and websites and all that, they've been having some serious security issues.
Yeah, they were hit with DDoS attacks first.
DDoS, that's where they flood a website with traffic, try to crash it, right?
Exactly. Overwhelm the server so no one can access it. But it didn't stop there. They then exploited some unrotated API keys to get deeper access.
API keys, aren't those like passwords for applications to access certain systems?
Yep, exactly. And if you don't rotate them regularly, well, it's like leaving your front door unlocked. Someone's going to get in eventually.
And they got access to support tickets, maybe even user data. Yikes.
Yeah, not good. Shows that even organizations with good intentions can be vulnerable. Security's got to be a top priority for everyone.
No doubt. Speaking of sneaky attacks, there's this new malware going around, Ghostpulse. It hides in PNG files. PNG files, those are just images, right?
Yeah, but Ghostpulse embeds itself within the image, so when you open it, bam, the malicious code downloads and executes like a Trojan horse.
Whoa, that's clever.
And this one deploys something called the Luma Info Stealer. That little gem steals your info, keystrokes, logins, credit card info, the works.
Ugh, sounds like a nightmare. Got to be careful about opening attachments from unknown sources, that's for sure.
For sure. Cybercriminals are always finding new ways to trick us. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the U.S. government. They're taking an interesting approach to national security in the digital age. They want to recruit tech leaders as reservist officers.
That's an interesting idea. So they're recognizing that they need the expertise of people in the tech sector to really deal with these modern threats.
Exactly. It's a different kind of battleground now, and they need people who understand it, people who can think outside the box, come up with creative solutions.
Makes sense. Cybersecurity, it's not just a technical issue anymore. It's a national security issue, economic issue, societal issue. It affects everyone.
It really does. We all need to be working together, staying informed, being proactive to make the digital world safer for everyone.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground in this part, but there's still more to come. Stay with us for part 3, where we'll wrap things up and leave you with some final thoughts and takeaways. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive. Docker, Fortinet, E2EE cloud storage. Man, we've covered some serious ground today.
It's been a lot, right? But hey, knowledge is power, as they say. The more you know about these threats, the better equipped you are to protect yourself.
Exactly. So let's talk solutions. We've laid out all these problems, vulnerabilities, breaches, all that. What can people actually do to, stay safe out there?
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but strong passwords, seriously, it's so basic, but so many people still mess this up. Unique passwords for every account. Use a password manager if you need to, but just Make it a priority.
It's like the foundation of good security, right? You got to start with a strong base.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of basics, MFA, multi-factor authentication. If it's available, use it. Adds that extra layer of security, makes it so much harder for attackers to get in, even if they have your password.
It's like a no-brainer these days. Seriously, if you're not using MFA, get on it.
Breach. And of course, keep your software updated, all your devices, everything. Those patches, yeah, they can be annoying, but they often contain crucial security fixes, you know? Don't put it off, just do it.
It's like basic maintenance, right?
Like,
For your digital life.
exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about the human element today, so let's just, hit those key points again. Be wary of phishing emails. Anything that looks suspicious, don't click links, don't open attachments, unless you're absolutely sure it's legit.
And if you're ever unsure, just report it,
Yeah.
you know, to
Yeah.
your IT team or whoever handles security at your company. Better safe than sorry.
Always. And companies, listen up. Invest in security awareness training for your employees. Make it a priority. They need to know what to look for, how to spot those red flags, how to stay safe online.
Because at the end of the day, it's often human error that leads to these big breaches, right?
So true. Okay, I know it's a lot to take in, all this information. So if I could leave you with just one piece of advice, it would be start small. Focus on implementing those basic security measures we've talked about consistently. Don't try to do everything at once. Just pick one thing and make it a habit.
Yeah, that's good advice. Small steps, build those good habits, and you'll be in a much better place security-wise.
Exactly. And remember, security is not a destination, it's a journey. It's about constantly learning, adapting, and improving.
So to wrap things up, cybersecurity, it's not just the responsibility of IT departments or security experts, it's everyone's responsibility.
We all have a role to play in making the digital world a safer place.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for another deep dive into the world of cybersecurity. Stay vigilant, keep coding calmly, and we'll catch you next time.